I shouldn't even be doing this right now. I have class in 2 hours. Hello, my name's Beth, and welcome to Midnights with Beth. Welcome to this little corner of the internet. I'm Beth, and I thought I would tell you about all the books I read and DNF'd in January and February. Look what we got here. I got my mic upgraded to a little sword because I am about to be dramatic. And I thought, what better way to show it? These 2 months have been a ride, reading wise, because I think I have such wonderful reads and such nefastous reads as well. I'm looking at the pile right now, and a lot has happened. I have no idea how to properly do this, but I'll try. Close your eyes for a moment. We are in the beginning of 2026. Clock has just struck 12, and you find Beth in bed with a book, with a little tiny book. She's reading and she's giggling, and that book is The Hobbit. This is my precious little thing. I thought reading such a wonderful read first would set an example for the rest of the year. No, I have some books, yes. This was amazing. Also, take into account that I had no idea what this is about. Because let me explain to you that I sincerely know nothing about Middle Earth or J.R.R. Tolkien's world. I have not watched the films. I have not read the books yet, and I had simply no idea of anything apart from perhaps some characters I know. I decided that 2026 is the year that can no longer be. In case you didn't know what The Hobbit is about, like me a few months ago, this is about this little creature called a hobbit. It is not a dwarf. It is not any other creature we might have known before, but this is a small creature, smaller than a human, with big feet, and it is called a hobbit. We follow a hobbit called Bilbo Baggins, and how his life is turned upside down when a wizard comes to his door and say, "You're going on a quest." And there appear 12 other creatures to have breakfast with him, one after the other, and he's so stressed he decides to go on the quest. This is a children's book, which I expected because I originally picked up The Hobbit, and I have the Lord of Rings trilogy because I was so fascinated. I read quite a lot about Tolkien's and how he created this world and fully functioning language just for the sake of that, and that's so real. And I simply wanted to know more. So I picked it up, and it was, I have to tell you, it was so cozy. I think I imagine myself in the room with Tolkien and his kids, him telling them the story, doing voices and gestures, and I imagine myself hugging my knees, looking up at him and giggling with his sons. And that was simply really nice because it really transports you to another place, another time. That is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was so amazing. I cannot fathom how I didn't know anything about it just a couple months ago, and suddenly I decided to pick it up. Pick it up. Probably one of the best decisions I've made in a very long time. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. After this fantastical read, I sadly had a disappointing experience with that book. I had really high hopes in, and that is Burial Bones in the Midnight Soul by B.E. Schwab. This is disappointing because of how I love B.E. Schwab. You cannot see right now, but in my top shelf, I have a little shrine with all my V-Sharp books, and I was so sad to not have liked this so much. But I'm going to tell you what it is about in case you do love it. This was marketed in the internet as toxic lesbian vampires, and technically, it is right. And we follow these three women, which are vampires, of course, over the course of centuries, once more than others. And how they became vampires and how their lives intertwine with each other or with other vampires. The thing is, this book is incredibly atmospheric. I adored because one of these women is from Spain, my country, and I couldn't help but be left in awe with her V sharp described 17th century Spanish landscapes and society. I was really enamored with how V Shrub is able to write about other countries centuries ago. That was amazing because it is accurate. It was very accurate, and I was left mouth opened. Wow. And this character is one of the best character process, character growth, character it is one of the best written characters I have ever read about. It is crazy how well built she is and how over the centuries she changes little by little, and how the things she experiences really build her in. And that might sound completely absurd because that is actually how it should go, but you don't find that really well done, to be honest, and that was amazing. Now the other two characters are sort of introduced by us. How can I explain this without giving away anything big? The character that is most contemporary right now, which you go to a party, turns into a vampire, whatever. I could not care less about her. I want to sound nice. I don't want to be rude to her because the truth is, it's a character story basically. How she gets turned and she wants to find the person that turned her. But I really could not care less about her. And in her plot line, we get also introduced her sister, well, with flashbacks and how her life had been until that moment. And honestly, I don't think that was really good, well structured, let's say, because I do not care about this character. I could not care less about your past. And I don't know if I'm making any sense, but yeah, that. And then the other character, the third woman. I mean, I think her story was rather late in the book, and I would have liked to hear much more about her, but I think it was rather rushed. And yeah, I don't know. Simply, some parts were amazing, some parts were meh for me. And the ending was criminal. I think that was the worst ending. It was so rushed. It was so gratuitous. I think I've no idea. But I think the biggest problem I had with Burial Bones in the Midnight Soul is the narration style. She One of my favorite books is The Invisible Life of Adela Rue, which is written in this poetic sort of writing, and that was completely appealing for me because I love such things. But in her book, it made sense because it is such a character-driven story that you could spend a lot of time reading about nonsense. But this book was a bit more plot driven, and so being the process it made and this really poetic thing, for me it didn't make a lot of sense. However, you might think differently, which is completely fine. That was Burial Bones in the Midnight Soul by V.E. Schwab. I will be reading all of V. Schwab. I don't care. She's such a fantastic writer. This just wasn't her best work, in my opinion. Next up, I read Words Light, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language by Amanda Montel. This was amazing. I this was so funny. This was so enlightening. This was very interesting overall because I think my interest in linguistics and how a language has changed over hundreds of years is really being enlarged by I would have told you about Tolkien's. This book is basically a essay. Well, it's a non-fiction about how in language and in every language, not just English, women are being constantly insulted. Let's say because of how it evolves and how people uses this language. And it's so sad. And this is put into sense. Just basically that and explaining the history of the English language and some sort of ways to take him back, I guess. It's basically sets it all in the title is very accurate, I have to say. It was really, really funny and it was such a treat, to be honest. Oh, then I read a book for my book club, which was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. And I I don't think it was a book for me. This book is about two friends and the relationship in the 60s in Napoli, or Naples. I don't know how to say it in English. Well, that in a society in the neighborhood which was incredibly affected by the politics and brutality of the world, and that so you can see that in their friendship. But the thing is, it was so violent and crude, the way of narrating, and also the relationship between these two girls were so bad and toxic, and I don't think it was I don't think it was for me. That's very sad because it is a book quite popular and people have loved this book, but it's so crude. It just makes me uncomfortable. There is definitely I won't be continuing the series because it is a series of four books, which we know before getting into it. But the thing is, the ending. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but it's as it she didn't want to make some sort of an ending, and in the next book, a continuation. That made sense. It was, and it just simply ended abruptly, and that was really infuriating, to be honest. But I have to say, this book really, to me, it was really, it felt close to home in a way because I could see the resemblance between 16 Naples and dictatorship Spain. That was really sad, but that was made completely fabulously. That and the atmosphere and the I don't know, the feeling of the neighborhood, you could really sense it was real. It was almost tangible, you know? Instead of reading My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, I would really, really recommend you to read The Lion Women of Tehran, which is also a book that I read with a book club, and this is an absolute masterpiece. It is about it. Well, it is mostly the same. It is the relationship between two girls deeply affected by politics, in this case in Iran and not Italy. And well, what is happening in Iran right now, I think this is so important to also know a bit about the history of Iran and the Iranian revolution and how it affected women. I would recommend this 100 times more than My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. But yeah, definitely read this one instead of my brilliant friend. Then I had to read a book for school that was El Cuarto de Atrás, which is the room in the back, I guess. And this was a sort of half biography because it is the author himself being the conduit of the story, her being the main character, and it's this really short book about her life in dictatorship Spain, and it's sort of flashbacks going back to it was very stream of consciousness, and she gets visited by a man in black. That it was all really weird, and I think it was a bit superficial, just because she doesn't get into dictatorship Spain as much as I would have wanted. It's sort of she talks about for example the dictatorship daughter's hair instead of how brutal and how lives were really affected by this regime, and I don't know, I would have liked something more real in this particular book, just because how after because this book was written and published after the dictatorship ended, so it was a really good time to critique everything that had happened, how many people have died, how the country was struck by hunger, and but she was really surface level things, not really into that. It's not the book I would advised for I would have advised for schools, to be honest. Then last book of January, it is none other than Anna Karenina. I I have a blog talking about this, which I will tag somewhere. I don't know how you do this, but I will tag it. This was a whole other thing. Perhaps it's how my expectations didn't quite match what I read. Anna Karenina, it's about a love affair. All that is what I was told. That's how it was marketed. But really, half of the book is that. Half of the book it's this other character whose plot really feel a lot better, to be honest. This other character, Constantine Levin, which is my whole heart, I am him. It is crazy how close we are in personalities of sorts, and his journey, I don't know, through life. He's a nobleman that doesn't enjoy crowds and parties, and he lives in a really small town, and he help his farmers and that and it is the part most enjoyable to me, at least. However, even Levin didn't get too far. It was such a mess for me, to be honest. To me, it was really childish, really immature. Levin, for example, has this sort of way of thinking which could be revolutionary, but we don't go anywhere with that, and that really infuriates me because you could have done so much. And then Anna Karenina and her love affair, she was so childish. Oh my god, I am simply frustrated with this book. It is the best classic I've ever read. Absolutely not. No. It is it beginner friendly? Well, yes. It has 8 parts, as you can see marked there, and really, really, really short chapters. A page of 2 chapters. So you can read it really fast if you want to read it, but I would advise not to. And instead of Anna Karenina, I would really, really love you to read La Regenta by a Spanish author, but I think this was what I wanted Anna Karenina to be. This was sort of, imagine the plot of Anna Karenina, but so much deeply exploited, and with a critique on society, on the church, on the politics, on absolutely everything. And it's around the same time, 19th century. In a well, no, Anna Karenina was between Moscow and St. Petersburg, but this was in a smaller town, not such as a capital. But the portrayal of Spanish society, of how the church sort of controls and how characters are represented, absolutely crazy. Read this book instead, I beg you. And we have come to an end with January. We have February left. The first book I read in February was a reread of one of my favorite books of all time. That is Hamnet. Why can I tell you about Hamnet? This is one of the best books ever written. And in case you don't know what it's about, which I really doubt, Hamnet, I don't want to really spoil you. Hamnet is about this women, the life of this woman in 17th century England, and how her singularity really carries her to the world in such a magical way. She meets this really significant man to English as it is today. They marry, they become parents. It is simply wonderful. It is much more than anyone could have expected ever. And if you find the title familiar, it's because this interpretation, because it's all fiction, nevertheless, okay? This is about this boy, Hamlet, which inspires the great Shakespeare's play Hamlet. It is completely amazing. I am completely enamored with that play. But anyway, I read this book. I went to see the film, read this book, because the film could not capture how lyrical, how poetical the prose was. And that is something really remarkable about this book. Afterwards, I read The Safekeep by Yal van der Wooden. This was really nice as well. Perhaps it was not a 5 star, but the themes that were explored in here were really incredible, I think. This is about this young woman living in this house in the Netherlands, and she and her brother meet his older brother's girlfriend of the time, and his brother asks her if his girlfriend could stay with her for a bit. He has to do a job trip to Paris, I believe it was. Well, I don't know. This was really fantastic. And then between her and his brother's girlfriend, they start to be a lot of tension, a lot of unspoken things, a lot of gazes, a lot of. This book is how intimacy must be written. As a person, that explicit scenes are really violent to me, I would like to set an example. This is how intimacy must be written. It is subtle, it is, I think, with intimacy and sex overall, a lot happens within you, and that is not really explored in books, and how this book was written, it was completely right, to be honest. It was subtle, it was sexy, it was completely fantastic. And also, I do love how when books do places as characters, in this book, the house could be very well a character more in the book, interacting with the others and having its own thoughts. And this is also set after Second World War, and I honestly didn't know so much about how other countries were faced the consequences of the aftermath of this completely horrible happening in the world's history. And it was very interesting to read about it and to discover how other cultures and of the country had experienced this. That was The Safekeep by Jal van der Wooden. Now, for the sake of the comic adaptation, I read Project Hail Mary. It was okay. It was not life changing as many other people suggested it was. This book was about a man that wakes up without knowing who he is or where he is, and he must try to decipher his own brain and to figure out what his role is in the place that he is, which we know it's a spaceship in outer space where he must do a really crucial thing to save humanity. However, for me it was okay. I have this problem with science fiction. That is I don't like being treated like an idiot, and that has happened to me with Isaac Asimov novels, and I completely despise those because he's like, well, it's so complicated, I cannot possibly explain this. Do try me. I will be able to understand. And this book did explain those things, which I wouldn't say grateful because I want to set an example of being what you should do, explain the sciences. And the science part was I wouldn't say it is correct, but most of it was. There was some dissonance with things, something that wasn't really clocking with me. But I'm not a science person. I am not in STEM, so this read as a Rick Riordan book, and the main character is, you cannot tell me it is not Percy Jackson as an adult and pursuing chemistry. Because it was really, really, really familiar. The thing is, with that comparison, I can tell you it appeared to me a little childish. And I can tell, I can see that that wasn't the intention of the book. While Rick Riordan did write the Percy Jackson series as middle grade, I read Project Hail Mary as it was a child's book, almost. I wouldn't even say it was young adult because of how simple and how quick you read. But in a moment where everything is so quick in this media era, I can say it is definitely a project, a no, a product of its time. I don't know, perhaps you would consider it a good thing, but I don't know. Nevertheless, it was lovely how it was really heartwarming, the relationship between our main character and Rocky, which I won't say who it is, but it was really cute, I have to say, and it was it was nice. And that was Project Hail Mary. I will be going to see the adaptation out of curiosity how they adapted a book full of flashbacks and thing. I don't know. I'm certainly curious. Then I read what I considered one of my best finds, and that is Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I think it was this was so amazing. This is about a girl in Nigeria who is really privileged because of her family position regarding society, and how her and her brother comes they come to a clash with their cultures, and they can see their privilege regarding all the people, and how important religion is in their family, and then going to be with their aunt and cousins for a little while, and how their chaotic way of living really enrich them as persons, and in a society deeply influenced by politics, and how freedom was represented. I don't know, this was so incredibly written, so incredibly depicted. I i did spend the time of my life reading this book, this really short book, but deeply influencing, I would believe, in myself, and how I see things as a privileged person myself in the place I live. I don't know, I simply think that the clash of cultures and unseen people less privileged, and how they live and how they carry on with their lives, it was really moving overall. And the narration of and how religion really affected them, I don't know, it was really it was really wonderful. This is probably one of the new favorites, and I will be reading more of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie because this was wonderful as a book, and I cannot believe this was her first novel. It was so well written, and I don't know, it was amazing. Amazing. Then I read something not so amazing. I read Penance by Eliza Clark, which was my book club pick, and yeah, no. I did not like this overall, but I think it was a structural problem. The book is basically about this murder that happened, and how this journalist want to tell the truth and stuff, and they tell you at the end of the book, really, this is what happened, and then the rest of the book, it's slowly dissecting absolutely everything, and there was no sort of twist within the book. It was, you already knew everything, so I don't know. Also, the twist that was supposed to be is that the journalist is not really reliable. Okay. I mean, it is. Mm, I don't want to. I do not want to hate on journalists as a whole, but their job is literally um exaggerating things so you would read the work. I don't know. This simply wasn't for me, I guess. It was a really true depiction of teenagehood and girls, though. That was really well done, and the tone, the story, is said is completely, it really felt really real, but the content itself was a bit, to be honest. And it was nevertheless funny how the book is a of how the book mocks the true crime culture, and how we as a society are so eager to learn about brutal things. And I don't know, it was a bit meh for me because I did not find it anything at all, to be honest. Alright, now I'm going to express how nerd I am to you, but please bear with me because I reread Hamlet, and I went to watch the film, and I wanted to reread Hamlet to really make a contrast of it all. So I have this little thing, the complete works of Shakespeare, and I did read Hamlet. I believe I have not read a lot of Shakespeare, if I'm being honest with you, but of what I have read of him, I really love Hamlet. I believe, oh my god, at the moment, it is my favorite Shakespeare, and every time I read it, I feel completely moved and completely. I don't know, it really captures me in some sort of way that I cannot really explain. Hamlet is about the prince of the Danes, Hamlet, who returns home because of his father, the king, has died, and his uncle, his father's brother, is now king and is now married to his mother, which is weird. And he sees his father as a ghost, telling him that he's been murdered and he shall do him justice. And the play is about how Hamlet completely spirals and goes completely mad, and how he tries to take revenge for um his father, which is now dead, and can't do anything himself. I simply believe it is beautiful, beautifully written. How the monologues are really captivating, and how sanity and mental health plays a crucial role. How people die because of this man completely gone insane. It was really wonderful to me. And lastly, in February, I they announced the International Bookie Prize, which is a prize I'm really interested in. And I read one of the picks. I intend to read all of them if I can before they announce the shortlist and then the winner. But I read The Work Child by Olga Wren. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, which is funny, following Hamlet, a Danish story as well, following this little figurine made of wax. And this was a weird book. This was weird as hell. This book really explores how the witch trials came to be in Denmark, and that was really interesting because I have mostly no idea about the witch trials apart from Salem and stuff. But yeah, we follow the figurine of that was made by a woman who is a witch, which has her own coven and practices witchcraft. It was really, despite not understanding half of the time what was going on, it was really good. um, Mostly because of the narrative. It was really appealing. It was really, it was like a rhythm. You just had to go with the flow. It was really poetic, and I think I am showing myself completely because every time a book is poetic, but it is really how I like my books. Poetic, fun, and really introspective, I would say. Well, I think this was really good. I have yet to read the other 12 books of the long list, but so far I am really content with what they've chosen. I find myself really eager to continue reading the selected books because otherwise I wouldn't have discovered this, and I feel really grateful to have discovered this cultural thing, historical thing that I was unaware of, basically. Oh, I will continue reading the list, yes. That was all February, but I want to tell you first of the two books I DNF'd this month. February. Oh my god, I don't even remember its name. The Crisis of Narration by this Korean philosopher Byung. Wait. Okay, now I know. It was written by Byung-Chul Han, which I am really interested in because he won an award in my country, and I think his discourse was really appealing, and what he said felt really important, and I really wanted to read this book. It's in sort of an essay. It is a really short book about how political forces control the narration, and how we're being manipulated all the time by telling, or not sort of telling the whole truth. And well, I don't think I should even tell you what this is about because I might get it wrong. And I DNF'd it basically because of I read it in English, and I found, okay, perhaps it's simply just me, but my brain could not understand the sentences. That might come out as weird, but I knew what the words meant, but the sentences as a whole did not make any sense for me. So I don't know. It probably is the edition, but I'm truly really interested of reading this man and this philosopher with such an important speech. I don't know. Perhaps I'll read it in Spanish. I obviously cannot read it in Korean, so I guess I'll try and read his other works in Spanish. I don't know. I simply hope it makes sense in my brain. I don't know. Probably it's just Nairo. I don't know. The other book I DNF'd in February was Hood Feminism, whose author I cannot remember now. This book is basically about how modern feminism affects black culture. The thing is, I'm really interested in this topic because feminist discourse, not feminist itself, but certain so-called feminist people are excluding black people, which is nonsense, really. Um, and I really wanted to see the point of view of another culture that's not mine, of course, into this really monumental thing, this really important thing. But I had to DNF it because I could not. It was obviously not reliable because I'm not black, as you can see. But it was so US centered and it was so United States centered that I was really expecting something more universal of black people and their culture. But it kept talking about gun violence, which is a US problem, really, or certain methods they have in the US to really be able to afford things, like something called food stamps. I do not know this, but I that is also US centered. So I was seeking a really more universal thing that black people could relate, but I only encountered black people from the United States reality, which is obviously really important, but I'm not really interested in the United States, those land of the match at the moment. So yeah, I had to DNF it. I was not interested in the US. And with that concludes all the books I've read on DNF this January and February, the first 2 months of the year, I so many things have happened so far in the year. It's crazy. We're only 2 months in. That's absolutely mad. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm really interested in what you've read these 2 months, so please let me know. I'm always so happy to hear from you. And if you have any recommendations based on my preferences, please do let me know. I'm always open to new recommendations and to writing down my TBR and to enlarging my TBR. So it was a pleasure to see you, and we'll see each other in the next one. Bye.